People really still think vulnerability is a weakness. It's funny. I just did a podcast episode with an amazing woman named Alex from England. She's got a podcast called Notes on Vulnerability that'll be coming out in January, she said. But we're talking all about vulnerability and choosing love over fear, which is, the whole thing I'm here always to talk about and demonstrate and support people with is how do we choose love over fear, which is essentially to say, how do we be vulnerable / courageous so that we can have what we want in life. And there is no love without vulnerability. Said in another way, there is no love without risk. And so, what a beautiful thing to practice and get better and better at is our vulnerability. And she asked me a great question at the end of the podcast I want to share with you guys, which is, how does one become more vulnerable? How does one take on their vulnerability in a better and better way? And I said, one little bit at a time. Give ourselves permission to start small. Often we compare ourselves to other people. We decide what's good and what's bad without giving ourselves permission to be on our own journey at our own pace and to actually celebrate whatever version of vulnerability is a big deal for us. And I said that might even look like simply just saying what's there for you. Where normally I'd run away, I might say, right now I really want to run away and I'm nervous to. And me telling you this is a huge breakthrough for me. That's amazing. That's fantastic. Because what's so incredible when we start to let ourselves / give ourselves permission to have these little improvements is they build momentum. It becomes like this snowball. And before I know it, that thing that I was always scared to say becomes something I'm a little more comfortable saying. And then before you know it, now I'm saying something I never thought I would say. And next thing you know, I've got this strength and vulnerability. But can we give ourselves permission to take that small step and build upon it? To me, you can apply that to literally anything in life. So I wanted to talk to you guys about that today. I wanted to answer some questions since I haven't done a live in a while. So write some questions in the chat box or in the little question box thingamajigger here, and I will answer some questions for some people. And we'll see how vulnerability plays a role, because I'm sure that it will. I don't know if you guys know, another great question she asked me. What is the most toxic mindset or perspective when it comes to relationships? And it is, I really thought about that. I was trying to figure out what is like the most. And what stood out for me, it might not be the most, but it was the one that I thought of, was when we label or generalize an entire gender. I think that is the most terrible mindset we can have. If I want an extraordinary relationship with a wonderful woman, while simultaneously thinking that women are deceitful or selfish or something like this, I'm screwed. Because no matter how extraordinary the woman is that's in front of me, I'm still going to have this baked in kind of background opinion that she's going to somehow screw me or deceive me or lie to me. So until we get that sorted, there's no chance really. So that's just something. Christelle, sometimes I'm crying in front of my partner and I don't care. I have nothing to prove. This is normal. I express what I need. Awesome, Christelle. Hell yes to self-expression. The stuff I said about trusting your own strength and not trusting that nothing will go wrong was really, really valuable for me. I'm so glad, Brandon. I'm so glad. Hell yeah. See, here's the thing. We're so busy trying to focus on whether we can trust someone. What if instead we could trust ourselves that we're going to be okay no matter what happens? Then we are unstoppable. Doesn't mean you're going to know what's going to happen. Doesn't mean you can predict or control the future. None of us can. But if I can develop my muscle in trusting myself to have the courage of being vulnerable in any situation, oh my gosh, like life's going to come at us, but we're not stuck, which is so empowering. Scrolling. Oh, there we got some questions coming in. Does sharing too much and being open too much show how vulnerable you are? No. So I love this question because some people, you call this oversharing, right? A lot of coaches overshare, to be honest. I think a lot of coaches in relationships overshare about their relationship. Sorry, my hair is a little crazy. I don't, because I believe that certain things are for you. Not everything should be online. And you shouldn't share everything with everyone. That actually isn't vulnerability. So sometimes we might see someone like sharing a lot and automatically assume that means vulnerability. They still might be sharing from a place of trying to look good, trying to elevate their stature. That's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is a risk. You looking to elevate your stature or make yourself look good is not risky. It's actually the opposite of risky. It's playing it safe. That can be a tough one to see though, right? Because as you pointed out, we can easily think that and assume that that means, oh, you're being vulnerable. So thank you for that great question. Best way to encourage a partner to be open and vulnerable. I have a history of choosing avoidant and fearful partners. Yeah, so if you're used to being with someone avoidant or you're with someone who's avoidant right now, you have to stop projecting your version of vulnerability onto them. Because they might be doing things in front of you that are vulnerable for them that to you are nothing. Okay, that's a huge struggle I had. I would say I don't struggle very much with being vulnerable. I'd say that muscle in me is very strong. However, I would be with people who were avoidant or fearful avoidant, like you said, and I would expect them to communicate the way I am. Because that's just how it should be. It's like, well, that's what I'm used to and what I'm accustomed to. It doesn't mean that they have that same muscle. They might be being extraordinarily vulnerable when they tell me something that I easily could cast aside and think doesn't mean anything. Because to me, I would share it on a Tuesday afternoon. But they haven't shared it with anybody in 2 years. That's a really big one, to be able to acknowledge and not project your version of vulnerability onto them. And so you want to encourage, best way to encourage, to let it be small and celebrate when they are vulnerable. Really celebrate it. It really meant a lot to me when you shared that. You know, thank you for letting me in. I get that was a big deal for you. That's really beautiful, and that's going to add more fuel to their vulnerability. Kramer Interiors. Kramer, I was just thinking of Kramer America, like Seinfeld. Love that show. Kramer Interiors. I love that I'm getting a question about relationships from a business that works in interiors. How can you escape a relationship if other dependent children be affected and you're not able to financially stabilize the situation? I don't totally understand the details. How can you escape a relationship if other dependent children will be affected and you're not able to financially stabilize the situation? It's kind of a two-parter there. See if you can ask that again, but break it up a little bit so I can answer which part you're really looking to have support with. And anyone else that has a relationship question, just throw in the chat and I'll answer as many as I can. Gene Bean asks, how do you gauge an appropriate amount of vulnerability as you're getting to know a potential long-term partner? That's a tough one because it's just there's an idea of like a good level of vulnerability. It depends on what's appropriate for you. You know, does it work for you to move at that pace? That might be the question I would ask. Whatever the pace of that person is that you're dating or in a relationship in, are you okay with moving at that pace? If you are, then that's an appropriate amount. If you're not, then that might be a time to get curious more and go, okay, what can I expect in this relationship in terms of sharing and vulnerability? Scrolling. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. How do I ask for sleepovers? In the beginning we had them, but we kind of stopped for a while. I'd like to reintroduce them with this person. I just don't know how to do so without sounding too, I'm going to assume you're going to say needy there. That's my guess, my assumption. How do you introduce sleepovers? Well, this sounds like an opportunity for you to be vulnerable. I would I wouldn't jump ahead to how do I ask for sleepovers. I would start to share vulnerably what you've been missing about that. I would start to share with them, what's that been like for you to not have that the way you did at the beginning? That could create a fantastic opportunity for connection. And I know it'd be risky. That's what makes it vulnerable. And of course, I'm going to plug myself in here, guys. If you're looking for coaching, links in my bio to support you. You can learn about my program. You can sign up for my community. You can apply for coaching with me. I'm doing these things to help nudge people along towards their development, but keep in mind, nothing is going to be as effective as actually working in a structured program. This is just looking to get us more and more involved in our personal growth. By HQ Drew. HQ Drew. How do you stay vulnerable with someone who chooses not to stay vulnerable with you? Well, here's the thing. Being vulnerable just because someone else is being vulnerable isn't as strong. That's where real vulnerability comes in, is can you be vulnerable when someone else isn't? That's actually what makes it vulnerability. I would argue the opposite isn't even vulnerable. It's or at least it isn't to the same degree. So how do you do that? Keep it small. If someone, you love, care about is not being vulnerable with you, don't feel like you have to overdo it or compensate for their lack of vulnerability. Instead, start small and get curious. See what degree they'd be willing to play in. That's what I'd invite. Jesse, good one. You got some support with your question. Scrolling. I read the book Attached by Lemire Levine. Fantastic book. I recommend that to everyone I work with. Transformative books, podcasts you can recommend. Yes. Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza is my Bible. That's less about romantic relationships. Well, it's not at all really about romantic relationships. It's more about life, the power to influence your life. So that's a Bible for me. I'm reading it for the third time right now. To be honest, this might shock you. I don't listen to podcasts that much. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. My wife and I are reading Atlas Shrugged right now together, which is a very famous, very well-known classic book from the 50s, I think it is. Nothing to do with personal development, but there's a little nugget for you. What if you try to be vulnerable? That is how I am. But your partner won't be fully, just bits and pieces of what he wants to give you. Yeah, it's kind of like the person's question from before. Vulnerability is based on the person, not the actual thing. I'll give you an example. When I was in university, my best friend of 10 years told me that his dog died. And he'd been with that dog since the dog was born. It was so connected to his life. It was the first thing that he really cared about that died. At the time, my dad was sick with Huntington's disease, and he was dying. And I didn't think much of my friend's dog's death. I thought it was wimpy and nothing, and he shouldn't worry about it. That's what I thought in the moment. Today, after losing pets and my dad and other things in my life, I see it very differently. I get that for him to share that with me was a huge vulnerable thing. But at the time, I thought it was nothing because I was putting it through this contrast of relating my dad's experience to his experience with his dog. On paper, maybe that sounds more intense, but vulnerability is the connection the person has to that thing. So Mary Beth, with this man that you're with, I really invite you to see how you can gauge the level of vulnerability, because he might be building and building and building, and you're cultivating something special together. But it's going to take a level of patience, a lot of patience probably, to continue to cultivate that. And I really believe, so many great relationships, patience is a huge factor. So you got something there, and I acknowledge you for standing to have a relationship that's vulnerable. What a beautiful thing. Jesse asks, can someone with anxious attachment and secure attachment be together? Absolutely. In fact, if you are anxiously attached, I recommend you go find a secure person as soon as possible. They will help you become more secure. Hopefully they'll be patient enough with you to want to stick around, because if you're being riddled with anxiety, it's probably going to be a turnoff for them. But absolutely, my wife is a recovering avoidant. I'm a recovering anxious attacher. I say recovering because we're both secure now, but we easily can dip into those things when we're triggered or activated. Less and less does that happen, but it still happens because we're still human, So absolutely, Jesse. Scrolling. I like this girl. I know she wanted me a few years ago, but anytime we see each other, we have that passion that drives us crazy. But she's not single anymore. What should I do? Two things come up for me about that. First one is, if you were to share your desire to be with this person, would it be with the intent that she leaves this person as with you? You know, if you want to stand for her and you want to create a relationship together and that would be vulnerable for you, then I say go for it. But if you're just chasing her because she's with someone now, so you got to check your motives here. If you're just chasing her because she's with someone now and it's kind of the thrill of trying to get her, then I wouldn't recommend that. But you got to see kind of where she's at with that as well. Because I really believe in, like, don't try to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you. It's just a foolish action to take. You want to acknowledge what's there. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter how you feel about it. If a person doesn't want to be with you, it's like, okay, well, what kind of don't you want to be in a relationship with someone who wants to be with you? So I don't know. You want to look. I invite you to look at the bigger picture here, and that might give you an answer of what to do in the present. I'm so glad that helped you, HQ Andrew. Thank you for asking the question. Scrolling again. I'm exerting as much patience as possible with my avoidant, like he's a thing or she's a thing. I love it. What are the signs that my patience has taken its course? Depends how patient you are. Some people can have different degrees of patience. Someone could be in a line at the bank and someone's breathing too loud behind them and they want to smash a window. And someone else might be in a forest meditating for 12 hours. I don't know. It's up to you. I can't tell you. But I think if you feel like you're asking this question, that your patience has taken its course, then perhaps there's a new approach to take on. Perhaps there's an interruption being called. Doesn't mean a breakup, but it could mean there's something new for you to stand for you to be vulnerable. Right? This conversation started out being vulnerable. Maybe there's some place for you to be vulnerable and take a new kind of risk in standing for the kind of relationship that you want. My wife and I have done that multiple times with each other, and it has absolutely been the catalyst to the next level of our relationship. But every time it's been scary. So that might be the invitation there. Swansea Roller Skater. Cool name. Completely avoidant here. Love the honesty. What does it mean to be vulnerable when falling in love? Needing someone? Question mark. I never understand what people mean when they say you have to be able to be vulnerable. Oh, I love this question. Thank you for asking that one. So being vulnerable, think of just like a baby is vulnerable. A little kitten is vulnerable. Why? Because they're at risk for something. They're actually putting themselves in a position. Look at dogs fighting or playing with each other. One of the dogs lays on their back and reveals their neck, basically saying, you can kill me if you want to. I'm giving up my power. And so in relationships, when we're being vulnerable, we're putting ourselves at risk to be judged, to be not liked, to be rejected, to be embarrassed. And so avoidant attachment struggles with vulnerability more than the rest for sure. But it just looks different because we tend, as avoidant, to not share as much, to pull back. So what it might look like for you to be vulnerable is to gently lean into sharing yourself in a way that you might be scared to. Looking at what do you want someone not to know? How close do you want someone not to get? For you to lean into that would be you being vulnerable. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. Thank you for that question. Okay, I'm going to answer one or two more and then we'll hop off. We met online and have been talking for 5 months, and he doesn't want to meet me on a real date. He's hesitating. Well, is it one or the other? Does he not want to meet you, or is he hesitating? Because if he doesn't want to meet you, then it's goodbye, sayonara. If he's hesitating, I'd get curious what's the hesitation about, and kind of look to see how long you're willing to be okay with that. We all have hesitations. That's part of, he's probably scared of something, right? We're talking about vulnerability. But have a look to get curious of, what is the hesitation? And notice yourself pushing too much. Notice yourself overextending yourself more than you want to. That'd be my place to look right there. Why did they stop? I don't know what that question is referring to. Oh my gosh, now there's tons of questions coming in. You guys, you can build momentum when I ask. It's good. Jenny asks, how to navigate retroactive jealousy. I've never heard this term, retroactive jealousy, when finding out that a partner is still texting an ex. Well, I mean, to me, that's a pretty big red flag that a partner is still texting an ex. Of course, the X factor is, what is the dynamic of their relationship? I've certainly messaged exes of mine in my relationship, but not really have any conversations, more like congratulations on the baby or, stuff like that. So the fact they're texting their ex, I mean, I'd be curious, like, what's that about? I mean, my biased opinion is when you end a relationship, end the relationship. Don't keep them around. I'm out for long-term love here. I'm not out for 1 foot in, 1 foot out stuff. So, I mean, me and my wife, we know we're each other's number one, so there's no qualms about that. But yeah, retroactive jealousy. I mean, there's something to get curious about there. I'd have a conversation. What's the dynamic of that relationship, and what are you guys willing to put up with there with that? All right. Let's do the last one, and then I'll see you guys later. How do you encourage people to communicate? Oh, I got 2 questions here because I like the second one as well. How do you encourage people to communicate? I tend to attract men who have difficulties communicating, and when I show my boundaries, they take it personally. When you show their boundaries, take it personally. I got a couple questions. One is, how do you encourage people to communicate? Well, you celebrate when they do something that you like. We're often very good at pointing the finger at things we don't like, being frustrated by those things, being angry at those things, and then reacting to that. We're less seasoned at celebrating what we like. I think we all could improve that. Our graciousness, our gratitude for when someone does something we appreciate, to make a big deal about it. Make a big deal about it and watch that person start to get more and more motivated towards doing that thing. So that'd be my first part. If you're attracting men who have difficulties communicating, when you show your boundaries, they take it personally. Well, there's something you get out of attracting men who have difficulties communicating. There's something you get out of that. Now, I do a whole coaching program on breaking through these kinds of patterns with people permanently. So I don't have a one-off answer for you. But I would start you on the path of getting curious about what you get out of attracting those kinds of men. There's some part of you that gets to, some part of your ego, some part of your survival mechanism that gets to shine with those men that you say have difficulties communicating. And I wanted to do this question because I liked it. Oh no, I think it's just a comment. But you were touching on something about Jack says, I agree that stereotyping an entire gender is toxic. Not every single person, male or female, is different, but their behaviors seem to reinforce my thoughts that men just want sex. I get it. I get that. And what you want to practice saying, and everybody who's listening to my stuff practice saying, my exes just wanted to have sex. Or the men I've dated just want to have sex. Not men all the time. Not all men. Not all women. It's just irresponsible communication. You know, people in this city suck. Okay, what? Like, that's just an unintelligent way to speak. Have you met every person in this city? Probably not. So speak to what you actually mean. Otherwise, you just paint yourself in a corner. You know, so that's my thoughts on that. All right, you amazing humans. I'm tired of hearing myself talk, so I'm going to hop off. And sending you love. All of you wonderful people who are engaging in my content, who are working on themselves and their relationships. It's fucking awesome. Keep it up. It matters. It's important. All my content is about you choosing to be the one to make a difference. Not waiting for someone else to do it. Not letting someone else control your future. You have so much more power than you think. So I acknowledge you for all the ways that you are engaging and training yourself to have that power. Sending you love wherever you are with whatever you're dealing with. See ya.